The rankings have been revealed. We have all responded. We can all take them in. And now we will see another batch of games this weekend and what the College Football Playoff Selection Committee will take from those games and manipulate the rankings from there. Welcome into the Voice of College Football on a Thursday night in the beginning of college football for the weekend, except for you Maction fans who have lived it up big with some high-scoring games on Tuesday and Wednesday. I would have to say that I have not necessarily taken part. I received a text message from one of my best friends yesterday. So this came off the heels of the Rod Farva during one of the shows asking me if I liked the new Kent State uniforms. They were in action against Northern Illinois last night. I, of course, graduated from the illustrious Kent State University. And my buddy Mike texted me last night and with a screenshot from the game. At that point, I didn't even know Kent State was playing. And he said, stay tuned for an instant analysis on MarkRogersTV following the Northern Illinois Kent State game. Of course. And I told him about the Rod Farva asking me about the Kent State uniforms and me being completely clueless that Kent State was playing last night. And that I should actually give my buddy Mike login information here. He could provide the analysis. They wore those powder blue San Diego Chargers uniforms. You know, what was the San Diego Charger fight song that Boomer Chris Berman used to at times refer to? I don't remember what San Diego Supercharger. Yes, Superchargers. So Kent State attempting the powder blue out last night, apparently. Big primetime game. They won 52-47. Yay, Flashes. I believe 5-4 now, breaking the 500 barrier. In an unrelated college football note from the same Akron area, last night, Akron U fired its coach. Coach Arth went 3-24. So he was 3-24, but 2-7 this season. That sounds like a pretty good upgrade. Like the trajectory was headed straight up for the Zips, the mighty Zips, at 2-7 this year after, let's see, 1-17. You go 1-17, then you get into the next season at 2-7, including staying within one score of the defending champion Cardinals of Ball State, and he gets axed. Okay. I'm guessing that's not why you're all here. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. The phone lines are open. They've been open since I stepped on stage. We're on the set. We're ready to go. Lights on, action. Let's fire it up right here at the Voice of College Football. 860-499-3332. I will post the call-in number at the bottom of the screen on the ticker in just a second. First, I will let you know that you can catch my picks on Patreon, and why would you not? I can brag about this for at least 2 more days. 13-5 against the spread last weekend. 13-5 against the spread last weekend. 107-69 against the spread this season. Please give me somebody else that is 107-69 against the spread, picking all the top 25 games. There are people that may have a better win percentage that pick like 5 games a week. 107-69. I've picked 178 games this year because I pick all the top 25 games plus every week. Go to Patreon, search MarkRogersTV, or make it easy on yourself, and you can just grab the link in any of the description sections of the videos right on Patreon. And with that, you get so much more. I'm not going to detail it right now, but you get so much more than that on Patreon. Steve Merrill's Under the Radar Selection of the Week. That has to be posted tonight. Actually, I need to post that. I should have posted that this afternoon. It will be posted tonight. Patrons, it will be posted tonight. Steve Merrill's Under the Radar Pick of the Week. And then also our 20 media members, some of your favorites right here at the Voice of College Football: Steve Hellwagon, Kevin Noon, Tony Gerdeman, the Wholesome One, Steve Dace, Ty Hudson, Corey Bratta, Mike McDaniel, Paul Van Wagner, on and on and on. Some of your favorites right here at the Voice of College Football: Tony Siracusa, Jason Ray, Kevin McGuffey, making their 12-pack picks as well each and every week. We need a sponsor. We'll start with one. We'll take about 10 sponsors here at the Voice of College Football. It would be worth your while. Sponsors needed here at the Voice of College Football. Jump on in. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App are one way to contribute, or actually it would be technically 3 ways to contribute: Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App if you want to bypass the Super Chat and YouTube, but we certainly welcome the Super Chats as well here at the Voice of College Football. Post-game shows. Oh, my word. They've been successful this year, and thanks to you for joining our post-game shows that are sprinkled throughout our 25 team channels: Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, Iowa, Penn State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Florida State, Miami, Virginia Tech. Post-game shows right here at the Voice of College Football. And did I let you know that we could use a sponsor or 10 right here at the Voice of College Football? We want to do this throughout the season, throughout next year. We want to be here in 10 years talking college football with all of you. And I'm going to get to the rankings, the college football playoff rankings, because I did a little research. I went through the 2014 through 2020 first edition initial release of the college football playoff rankings to see if we can find some trends and what has happened to some of those teams that came out of nowhere to reach the college football playoff, and what happened to those early rankings leaders in the top 4 that dropped out of sight. On to the phone lines here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's the real MVP. How you doing?
The real MVP, hello? Basically, I would think at this point you are still behind, but I think you are quickly catching up to whomever has the most first calls of the night. I think you're ready to take the lead. You certainly have the season lead.
Well, you got to be fast on the fingers. I've learned that through multiple call-in shows.
You certainly are.
Be here early, like the video, and ring that notification bell. That's how you do it.
That's it?
Yeah, that's all it takes. So,
well, can't wait to hear from you. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the subject, and then I want to preview some games. So, for the FPI rankings, I've got them pulled up on my screen, and some of them are completely off, in my opinion.
Okay.
They have Pittsburgh at 6.
I heard Pitt was 6th a few weeks ago. Are they still 6th after losing to Miami?
They're 6th right now.
That's insane.
They have Iowa State at 9 and Clemson at 10.
Almost equally as insane. Not quite, but in the same ballpark.
How about this one, Mark? They have Coastal Carolina above Kentucky.
Oh, my word. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Or I'll go to the very bottom. They have UMass below UConn, even though UConn lost to UMass by 13 points.
I have less to say about that just because of the ineptitude of those teams at that point. But your point's well taken. Yes.
Yeah. So, BYU at 45. They're below Houston, Arizona State. They're below Appalachian State.
And see, it starts out from the top accurately with Georgia. No question about that.
Yeah.
Alabama can be argued, but I have no issue with that. If you're truly taking all kind of metrics on the football field into consideration and putting it together, that Alabama would spit out as the number 2 team in the country. Same thing with Ohio State. They could be anywhere from 2 to 8. That's fine. Oklahoma, Michigan, and then this Pitt ranking at 6. How does that possibly happen? They've lost to Miami and Central Michigan.
Hey, if you go 2 spots below that, you'll see Georgia's name. At Florida.
Florida.
They have them at 8. Yeah, Florida.
What exactly is the power index trying to tell us? I thought it was supposed to be ranking the best teams in the country, 1 through 130.
I guess I like Florida. I think George might have made this power ranking. Does George work for ESPN?
Yes.
Is that what he's doing now?
He used me as a reference.
Oh, okay. He might have got a hold of the rankings for having Florida at 8.
This is worse than I expected. This is the first time I'm looking at I've looked at them many times in terms of the probability of the games, the percentages of the prediction of who's going to win the games. But this is the first time this season I've looked at the actual rankings 1 through 130. Wow. Texas, number 11.
Yeah. How about your boys undefeated Wake Forest is at 26. They're not even in the top 25. Which
again, see,
I mean,
I can understand that. I think that's certainly low, but I can understand putting together a system that doesn't value wins against weak competition. I get that. But when you're clearly losing games and you're losing to not great teams, it's not like Florida's 4-4 and they scheduled Ohio State out of conference and they lost to Georgia, Alabama, and Ole Miss. You know, that would be an extreme where you could say, okay, this team's 4-4, but man, they just had to play the most ridiculous schedule in the country. Maybe they are the 8th best team. No.
How about, well, the reason I highlighted Wake Forest is because they're below Miami.
And where did you mention that Kentucky's ranked?
Kentucky's ranked 34.
Well, that further lends itself to the Florida ranking not making sense because they lost to Kentucky. So Kentucky, you would think, would be highly ranked to justify the Florida ranking. Wow.
Well, if it makes any more sense, Mark, LSU's right behind them at 35. Unless the FPI is somehow saying that Alabama is just, and Georgia are just so far and away 1 and 2.
Well, that's fine. It's still.
It doesn't even. I'm trying to make sense out of this nonsense, to be honest. It makes no sense. Let's see. How about 3-6 Nebraska, 29.
Yeah. I don't think that that's that far off. Like if we could possibly play some kind of tournament, if we could play if it was humanly possible for everybody to play 130 games, I'm not so sure that Nebraska would be that much lower than 29th. I think they'd be lower, 15 spots lower. I'll put them more in the 45 range.
Yeah, but It's not the spot is wrong. It's just the teams behind them and above, like behind them, I think would so easily beat them. Like if they were in the same range as UCF, Kansas State, FSU, Miami, you know what? I can see that. But putting them where they're at,
you know who's really awful?
putting them
that's gone under the radar this year. Nobody's really paid attention. USC. They're 47. They're 4-4. They just barely beat Arizona by a touchdown last week. Arizona, they beat Arizona by a touchdown. They lost to Washington State. They got smashed by Stanford. They lost to Oregon State.
They lost to Utah.
Lost to Utah. And they've really not beaten anyone any good.
I've got their schedule pulled up. It looks like their best win is at Washington State.
Yeah.
Well, then, that is atrocious. That is atrocious. And this is a mess. I've just pulled it up like 10 minutes ago. I realized they would be bad, but this is a whole new level, in my opinion. So I'm going to let somebody else talk about the rankings, but I want to get into a few games with you, if that's okay.
Heck yeah.
Okay. So I'm in hearing this, and this, I know this is going to maybe hurt George's feelings. But Florida has to go on the road and play South Carolina. I know South Carolina is not a juggernaut. They're a horrible team and all that. But I don't trust Dan Mullen to get his team up and ready to play against them. So I'm going to put them on a light upset alert that they could lose.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
Well, I don't really see that happening. It's not something that's on my radar, but it's possible. When you get to this point in the season and a team is rather disappointing and not meeting the program expectations, the fan base expectations at a place like Florida, then you don't know where that's going to go the final month of the season. That could really run off the rails. You know, you take a team like Purdue, and the expectation is, let's get to a bowl game. Let's get to a bowl game, and then if things break our way, maybe we can contend for the division championship. And so 4-4, 5-3 at this point of the season is still, well, this is where we expect it to be. Let's keep fighting. We want to get to a bowl game. Well, if you're at Florida, you're 4-4 and 2-4 in the SEC right now. Guys have the tendency, and again, I'm not pointing my finger at Florida in particular, just in this type of scenario, to start thinking about themselves and thinking about if they're upperclassmen preparing for the NFL draft, if there's just all sorts of, they start thinking transfer portal these days, and there's just less to play for. That's all there is to it.
Right. Do you think it's looking like the writing's on the wall for Dan Mullen? What are the odds he gets fired or mutually part his ways or takes another job, or he's not there next year?
I guess.
I mean, he had that viral moment of him being the clown, which he does a lot, where he said, we're not going to talk about recruiting until the off season, which I understand how if you're an athletic director or something like that, you're wanting to win at Florida, you're going to allow your head coach who's doing horrible things. Oh, that's a later issue.
Well, I would think that you would make a generic statement, at least if you were the head coach and confronted with recruiting. You, of course, can't talk about specific recruits. That's not allowed. But you can talk about recruiting and talk about how important it is, because it is. I would guess,
Right.
my
But
guess
for
is that
him,
Dan Mullen's going to be there next year. I'm not super confident in making that statement, but that's probably my lean. That's my 60-40 lean.
okay, that's not as confident as it was at the beginning of the season.
No.
Florida's an interesting place to be right now. You talked about Purdue, and I actually think they can pull off a major upset this week. They get Michigan State at home. If you look at Vegas, Michigan State is only a 3-point favorite, and Purdue is known for being giant coach. And playing at Purdue is a tough place. Great teams lose there all the time. And they've already beat Iowa, and they're still in the division. Purdue's still in the division race. They've got a lot to play for. I think Purdue could get them.
Oh, yeah. That would not surprise me at all. I may even make that prediction. We'll see. I've had to work on those.
Well, if you want Mark's predictions, you can subscribe to his Patreon page for less than $5. Is it $5 a month?
$5 even.
$5 even. Not even a 99 cents tacked onto it. And don't you also get like 20 media members fixed?
You do. You know the drill.
Yeah. And what's your record?
107-69 against the spread.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's really good. Well, Mark, that's all I've got for you today. Have a great rest of your show.
Thank you, sir. You have a good night. Appreciate the call.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Before we take any other calls, we want to talk some Auburn football. We've got Michael Gittens on the line from the War Report to talk up the Auburn Tigers here. Michael, how you doing tonight?
Really good, Mark. Really good.
Great to have you here. I believe that your team is partaking in what I would consider to be the best matchup of the week at Texas A&M. And let's start out with that college football ranking. Does it matter to you at this point? There's a lot of football to be played.
Oh, man.
12, right?
Yeah, I would say right now, Auburn's right where they should be in the rankings. They've got a lot left in front of them, and they have the consensus hardest schedule left in college football. So this committee released some rankings. They brought Mississippi State out at 17. They're still left on our schedule. So whether they stay there, they got a match up with Arkansas this weekend. But hypothetically speaking, if they win that matchup, you just came off a top 10 Ole Miss. You've got number 17 Mississippi State. You've got Alabama, who's sitting at number 2 right now. And if you get through that gauntlet, we've got Texas A&M this weekend, but if you get through that gauntlet, you've got to play Georgia again. So there are plenty of chances for this team to prove that they are where they should be right by the end of it. I think it's a really good spot. And I think of all the 2-loss teams, similar to 2017, this might be one of the best shots that any 2-loss team has ever had to get into this playoff. I don't see how you leave the SEC champion out of it.
No, you don't. And that 2-loss scenario not just involves you, but of course, Ole Miss and Texas A&M.
Mm.
The advantage that you guys have, obviously, is that one of the losses is out of conference for Texas A&M. Both losses in conference, but they've already slayed Alabama head-to-head. Have that taken care of. You guys would have to do that anyway, or the conversation's null and void. Ole Miss probably in the 3rd position from that standpoint, but it could be interesting for those of us that don't have a dog in the fight, that just love to see chaos. If either Texas A&M runs the table and get some help from you, or you guys run the table and then that takes care of itself and you create the 2-way tie and march on to Atlanta. That would be.
Well, Texas A&M has 2 kind of iffy losses on their schedule, Mark.
Yeah.
So if they ran the table, I think you could make an argument because I don't think there's anything Georgia could do to get left out of this playoff. Even if they lose the SEC championship, if it's to a 1-loss Alabama or if it's a 2-loss Auburn, I think Auburn gets in. All of college football hates the SEC because there will be two teams from the conference, and I think Georgia makes it in no matter what at this point. And when you're looking around college football, look what they did to Cincinnati, right? They put Cincinnati at 6, which essentially tells me what they think of that win against Notre Dame. I think they have no shot here. So I think there's a better chance that 2 SEC teams get into this playoff than there is that Cincinnati makes it at all. The Big Ten champion, assuming that it's Ohio State or Michigan State, is definitely going to be in. And then you got Oklahoma, who's just hovering on the outside at number 8. And with the things that are going to happen in front of them, I still think they have a decent shot to get in as well, too. So Auburn has plenty of chances to prove they belong in this conversation. That's the blessing and the curse of playing in the SEC. You got when the season started, a lot of people thought we had the second hardest schedule next to Arkansas. Now we're sitting here, and the way things have panned out, you're looking at Penn State or Texas, and you're thinking, which was the tougher non-conference test? I think you can argue Penn State was, right? So you've got the hardest schedule. That's my vote. Football, right? You got the hardest schedule in college football. And Brian Harsin is sitting here in week 10 with the best record of any first-year FBS head coach so far this year. And the hardest schedule. They're getting better every week. They're making strides. And then the emergence of consistent Bo Nix. This is a scary proposition. If he plays up to his potential, it opens up a lot of possibilities for Auburn down the stretch here. So I think this team kind of goes as he goes. Teams have been they've shown that they're willing to sell out to stop the run and make Bo Nix beat them. I think we could expect that on Saturday versus Texas A&M.
It was only 5 or 6 weeks ago that, coming off the loss to Penn State and a shaky performance at home against Georgia State, losing to LSU in the second half, that I was already hearing ridiculous rumblings about Brian Harsin and the fan base not being happy. Well, you turn it around against LSU. You have a forgivable loss, just like everybody else against Georgia. And now back-to-back very strong performances against quality competition. Arkansas on the road, Ole Miss at home. And this team is looking strong.
Yeah, listen. It's a fickle fan base. Brian Harsin was not a popular hire. Our AD, Alan Green, went out and he got his guy. And when he came in, he repeatedly talked about having to change culture. Now, our last coach left a lot of talent, but he also left some bad habits. Brian Harsin has spent the better part of the offseason and the first half of this season working out those bad habits. We had questions about some of the talented guys who weren't starting in the Monday pressers. I've asked him about some of those guys. He said, listen, we're going to play the guys who practice hard. So if you're not seeing a guy, he hasn't earned it in practice. And he's proven that, I felt like he was falling on this, or he was ready to die on this hill. He's going to change culture at whatever cost. And guys are going to work hard, and they're going to try, and they're going to understand that it is a complete privilege to play football for Auburn University. So now what you have is he goes out in the offseason, he gets TJ Finley. We hear all offseason that TJ is pushing Bo to be his best. And then he does the unthinkable, because under Gus, benching Bo was an impossibility. But against Georgia State, as you referenced, he got benched. He comes back after that. He goes on the road to LSU. And though statistically it wasn't a great game, he did some amazing things that game. And we get our first win down there in 21 years in Death Valley. Now, LSU's a little bit of a mess, but it is the start of something good, some good momentum for them. Arkansas comes. Not a lot of people thought we could win that game. And they win it convincingly. Ole Miss comes, still a lot of doubters, and now we're at Texas A&M, and you still have some people who aren't on the train. I really believe that's about Bo Nix. It's about which Bo Nix is going to show up 2.5 years. Some people are not convinced that he's can do it 3 games in a row. but I think he's starting to have some believers. Count myself as one of them. I was skeptical at the beginning of the season whether this transformation job could be pulled off in one off season. And look where he's at. He's playing his best ball now. They're keeping him within himself. And I think that Mike Bobo has quietly done a phenomenal job play calling so far this year and putting guys in the best position to make plays.
You've had what I consider to be 4 quality games, Penn State, and then the 3 in conference. But there's going to be a lot of people that are going to see Auburn play for the first time tomorrow night because, like I say, it's a thin schedule in college football across the map. This is the best matchup, I believe, in college football tomorrow with most talent on one field. And so just give us a feel for, we know about Tank Bigsby. A lot of people should know about him. He's a monster and has been since he stepped on campus. Just those players on both sides of the ball that people may see for the first time and be impressed.
Well, beside Tank, who is the obvious name, Embo, they've got a kid down there. His name is Jarquez Hunter. He is a true freshman running back. He's just 100 yards behind Bo in total rushing for the season. He burst onto the scene. Tank slowed down a couple games early this season. There was some conjecture about whether he was hurt or not. Jarquez has come in and quietly put together a very good freshman campaign. He is a load to tackle. He squats 600 pounds. He's an absolute monster. And this coach has said that he earned it in practice. He earned those reps in practice. Now, the senior, Sean Shivers, which is what everybody assumed he would be the number 2 back, missed some games, and this freshman just burst on the scene, and he took the number 2 spot and just never gave it back. Now we're playing all 3 backs. So watch out for Jarquez Hunter on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side, over the last few weeks, we've gotten healthier. So this is a very, very, very good run defense. We returned the top tackler in the country in Zacoby McClain. You got to know this name. He's going to be everywhere. He finished last week with 14 tackles versus Ole Miss. He just all over the place. Right next to him playing is Owen Papo, our other linebacker. Owen was a top 5 tackler in the SEC last year. We returned to both, but he was out with injury. He came back with a vengeance this week and made his presence felt. But while he was out, his backup, Eku Leota, again, all over the place. This is a deep, talented linebacker core. The defensive line is playing well. And then look out for Jalen Simpson at safety. I think, again, like you said, there are so many first names that people are going to be seeing here. Like, what do we know about Auburn? We were picked to finish 6th in the SEC this year by the media. And we're sitting here in November talking about them being in contention. So it's going to be interesting. On the other side, you got Texas A&M. This wasn't their quarterback of choice to start the season, right? King got hurt. Calzada, I think, has come in and done a serviceable job there. But look for these guys to really get after him. His completion percentage is not great. His adjusted says that he's not that accurate at times. So we'll see if we can get back there and bother him some and force him into some mistakes.
Serviceable, great term to put on one Zach Calzada, who had the better of the 2 arms between the two, but a lot of mistakes out of him early. He's become, let's say, more serviceable. He's starting to eliminate the mistakes. It's not necessarily like some kind of light switch went on, like he's become a different player and some top 10 quarterback in the country, but he's gotten better eliminating mistakes and giving Texas A&M a chance to lean on the defense and Isaiah Spiller to get the job done. Again, this is what I consider to be the best matchup in college football on Saturday. This is the game I'm going to be watching for sure, in addition to everything else, but this is number 1 priority for me and a priority for all of you, whether you if you like Auburn football, forget it. You should be on the War Report. There's no question about that. Why are you watching me? You need to watch these guys, Michael Gittens and the staff over there at the War Report. But I'm telling you that if you just love the SEC in particular, but college football, and I'm a big proponent of smart college football talk, smart talk. There's so little of it, so precious little of it out there. These guys are worth the view, the listen, again, on the War Report right here on YouTube. Michael, we appreciate you stopping by. Enjoy the game, and hopefully we can talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Appreciate everybody being here, the voice of college football, and especially those folks that have held on the line. I will get to your calls right now. We just wanted to hear from Michael on the Auburn-Texas A&M game. For the Texas A&M side of that, we spoke with Andrew Hattersley earlier this week from Gig'em 247. And so check that out on the Voice of College Football SEC channel. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Chris.
Hey, Chris. How you
How
doing?
are you?
I'm good.
Good. I have a little bit of incentive for Texas A&M and Auburn.
Okay.
That's the belt pairing. It's for the belt. I know you don't like that, but that's another wrinkle, I guess, you can throw at it.
When did I ever say I didn't like the belt?
You didn't like it as a way to put a team in the championship.
Oh, well, no, that's no way to put a team in the championship. It's a novelty. Yeah. It's a fun thing to track for people who would like to track something like that. But I didn't say I didn't like it. I said it wasn't valid. It's not valid for anything. It doesn't tell us anything except for that team beat the champion. It's like it's taken from the boxing approach that if you beat the champion, regardless of your record, then you take the belt. Sure.
Okay. Colorado's championship in 1990 was a belt championship. They had to beat Notre Dame to win the belt. The game in the Orange Bowl, that was for, that's why some of your objections to Colorado, I'm not saying that you're wrong in your objections, but they have to be weighed against the fact that they beat Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl. That was for the belt.
What's wrong with my objection? I don't have an objection to the belt.
I'm just saying, if you have an objection to Colorado claiming a title, it has to be based on something besides them beating Notre Dame, because they had to beat Notre Dame to win the belt. That was
Colorado did not rightfully win a national championship in 1990.
Okay. Well, I don't want to debate that with you. That's kind of
they lost 2 games and tied 1.
They lost 1 game, I think. Who's the other game they lost to?
They lost 2 games.
They were 11-1-1, but
if you look into it, they were given a 5th down by the officials that led to a score.
The Missouri game. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they won that game, but
well,
I don't know, Mark. I just they did, but
gifted the game. So there are controversial officials calls all through the history of college football, but that is the only one that you can definitively say Colorado lost because they failed to score on 4th down and the game was over, and then they were given a 5th down. And the last time I checked the rules, you don't get 5 downs to score.
They actually spiked the football on 4th down, but I know what you're saying. But
yeah,
they didn't try to advance it on 4th down. They spiked it. Is what they did.
Yep.
And then on 5th down, the quarterback kept the football, and I couldn't tell from the angle I saw whether he scored or not, but the official, it looked like he fell on his back, and it looked to me like after he'd fallen on his back, it looked like he pushed the ball over the goal line, because the official had to run from the sideline to look. And when the official got to where the quarterback was, he could see where the football was, and I think he ruled it a touchdown, is what I thought. That was the game that they played Missouri in Columbia, Missouri. I don't know. I've never been to Missouri, but I think their stadium's a little strange. I've heard it's like an underground stadium or something. It like goes underground. You ever been there?
I have not been there. No.
Yeah, I've heard it's a strange. There's one real close to where I live that's like that. The Thunderdome or Thunderbowl, I guess. Thunderdome. The Thunderbowl, University of Southern Colorado. They have what it is the top of the stadium's at ground level, and so the stadium itself is underground. I know that kind of sounds kind of strange, but so there's one close to where I live too. It's called the Thunderbowl. So I think that's what I heard about Columbia, Missouri, is I think their stadium's underground. That's what I've heard anyway. They dug a hole in the ground. That's what they put a stadium there, is what I heard. I don't know if it's true or not. I've never been there, but I know it's that way at USC, Southern Colorado. Yeah, they play in an underground stadium.
I've also not been to Michigan Stadium, but I understand that it's partially underground. I don't know if that's true.
Well, the one in Southern Colorado, the one I've been to, it's definitely that way. In other words, the top of the stadium is at ground level. So the top, I think there might be like boxes or something above ground, but the whole stadium's underground. It's like under called the Thunderdome or Thunderbowl. That's USC, Southern Colorado. They won a national championship a few years ago. They were pretty good. John, I can't remember. I think it's John Ritson or something. Anyway, and they had some really good coaches there. They had some. Anyway, that was Division II football, but they CSU Pueblo, called Colorado State University Pueblo, but I always call it USC because it's Southern Colorado. But John Ritson, I think, was their coach, and they won a national championship here it's been several years ago now, but yeah, they play in an underground stadium.
This call brought to everyone by the Southern Colorado fan club.
Anyway, the only other thing I was going to ask you about, this football power index, people like the one caller, I think it's just misunderstanding of what it is. It's not a ranking. I mean, I guess you can maybe look at it as a ranking. What I do is the ranking. I know how to take that formula and convert it into a ranking. That's basically what I'm doing when I post. That's actually a conversion I do for it to make it into a ranking. So if he wants a ranking, he shouldn't look at the football power index. He should look at what I post. But I mean, that's neither here nor there, but yeah, football power index isn't a ranking.
Okay.
I mean, BYU
so
was 50
when
or
I
whatever.
see the team name Georgia and I see a column that says RK, I'm taking a wild guess that stands for rank, and under it says 1, and then Alabama 2, and Ohio State 3, and so forth. I believe that's a ranking.
Okay, unadjusted. Okay, I guess I'm not using the right language. Unadjusted. I know how to adjust it to turn it in. They're not taking into account wins and losses. They're just doing whatever it is to get that. That's why, like Nebraska, whatever they were at, they're not looking at their record. They're just looking at whatever it is they use to formulate which I don't really even know what it is, but I know the ranking. That's not the ranking. That's like that's where they are before you take anything into account other than just their whatever it is that. I'm not even completely sure I know what football power index is, but it's definitely not the ranking of the team.
I understand that, but
it is, I guess.
They're taking various metrics like yards per play and yards per play against and all those things, and they're putting it into a formula to determine how good the team is, apparently. My conclusion is that it's not working very well.
No, it works well.
No,
it works very well.
It doesn't work well when they say that Pitt is the 6th best team in the country. And no formula, I'll state this, no formula is perfect. So nobody's going to, no one is going to concoct the perfect formula. So every formula that if you try to devise some type of ranking from the formula is going to produce a result here and there that is odd or an outlier. That's understood. I can forgive that, certainly. But this has probably half of the top 20 grossly underrated or overrated.
Okay. Well, at any rate, if you want to compare that to what I do, I think you might get I don't know, you don't have to, and it's what I do isn't really, I mean, I know how to convert that into a logistic that puts the teams in the right order. And I don't know what else to tell you. I'm not saying it's perfect, like you're saying. It's probably many mistakes that I still need to fix, but I don't have Pittsburgh 6. I don't even know. It's like there's somewhere in the top 20 maybe, but I'm not putting Pittsburgh at 6. So a little bit, I know kind of what people are kind of thinking. They're thinking, well, if it's got Pittsburgh 6 or whatever, it must not be right or whatever. But maybe based on what they're looking at, it might actually be the right thing. But anyway.
And they're not looking at the right things. So either they're not looking at the right things, or they have come up with a imperfect and flawed, I should say, it's far from perfect, calculation to determine. And again, if Pitt was the only outlier, I would say, well, that's an anomaly. This is kind of strange that Pitt's number 6, but Florida's number 8. Texas is Iowa State's number 9, and Clemson's Clemson. I'm okay with Clemson to a certain extent. Texas is 11. These teams are not top 10 teams in the country. That has been pretty much seen on the field.
Well, again, you need to compare it against what I'm putting. You're doing some of what you're doing is right, but you're not making the final. I'm taking that rating and I'm taking it and I'm making kind of taking it and. Yeah, I'm putting I guess you could say I'm putting my own little spin on it, but I think I know what I'm doing, though. Is the only thing. And what I get isn't Pittsburgh top 6. I mean, So it's like I think you're being a little unfair to the system if you think it's wrong just because Pittsburgh is 6. But I mean, they're somewhere in the top 20, I think, but they're not 6. Not by the way I do it anyway. And I think what I'm doing is the right thing. So maybe you ought to tear mine apart or whatever and show me what's wrong with mine. But I don't know. I think the Football Power Index is actually a pretty good predictor of future. What it does is I think it puts teams against each other in a way that you can't really say is wrong. You can just say you don't like it or whatever, but I don't know that it's wrong. So it's like I'm going to defend it even if people don't like it, because I think that's what I'm using right now is the Football Power Index. So if it's wrong, then I'm wrong. So I have to kind of defend it. And I guess if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I mean, as far as that goes, but I don't have Pittsburgh at 6. I mean, I'm not even exactly sure where I do have them, but they're not 6. So I don't know. I just think you need to be a little bit, maybe take a broader view of the whole thing before you say it's wrong. That's just my opinion, Mark. I'm not trying to pick on you. That's just what I think.
Well, I don't need to look into it anymore. I know that, again, this is more about than just Pitt being 6th. Again, if they were the only one or if there were only 2 or 3, I would say, well, here's a formula and it looks to be very valid. There's a few questions that I have, or there are a few teams that seem to be grossly misplaced. But when about a third of the teams are grossly misplaced, then that speaks to the validity of the formula.
Well, I think it's a very valid formula. So I guess that's another
Not
thing.
when it's placing Pitt 6th, Florida 8th, Iowa State 9th, and on and on and on and on and on.
I think it's the right formula. I'm just telling you what I think. I think it's the right formula. I do.
Yeah, but nothing
I don't know. I didn't
put in the rankings backs up what you're. Yeah, and there are plenty of teams that make sense in this formula.
Even Nebraska, whatever they said was Nebraska, I think that's probably where they belong. Whatever it was it 37th or something?
29.
Something like that, right? And then where did you say BYU was? 47th or something? That's about right. I think you said 47th. Doesn't really matter. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to tell you is I'm going to stand by it even if you think it's bad. I've had too much luck with it to say it's not the right thing. I think it's actually the right way to go.
Well, they certainly missed on a ton of games last weekend. That's for sure. And again, you're going to use it for. And again, there are upsets. Of course, that's there are no system is going to be able to tell you the final score and the winner of every game, obviously. But this missed on a ton of games last weekend, and I just further pointed out, because before the games were played, I pointed out exactly which games the computation was just ridiculous. Saying that Nebraska had a 75% chance of beating Purdue. I pointed that one out immediately. That Pitt had an 80% probability of defeating Miami. I pointed that out immediately.
Yeah, I don't make the prediction, so you can't really blame me for that.
So,
I mean, I'm not making the prediction. I mean, it's like I'm not doing that. So. But anyway, this is my 10th call, so I figure I probably win a prize, don't I, for calling in 10 times?
We're not keeping track. As soon as I hire some kind of stagehand that keeps track, we will. I would.
I already.
If I was giving you a prize for 10, boy, I owe a lot of people a lot of prizes.
What if it's just a booby prize? I mean, that would work too, you know. I'll take a booby prize.
What we should do, Chris, is we'll have the live chat determine what your prize should be for your 10th call. We'll leave it up to them.
That sounds fair.
Well, thanks for the call, Chris. I appreciate it.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
I will put it this way as well. I am neither smart enough nor have I taken the time to try to concoct some type of system where you enter a bunch of statistics and it spits out some type of ranking that is going to be valid. So I will say that I'm not the person to do that necessarily. Maybe I could figure it out. I don't know. But it would not be worth my while. But I just know that when there's a result, it's like, it would be like if somebody said, I built this clock and they handed it to you and you didn't know exactly what the time was, but you knew it was sometime in the middle of the day. It was sometime in the middle of the day, and they gave you some kind of digital clock, and it said that it was midnight. And you could clearly say, well, it's not midnight, so this doesn't work. And if somebody asks you, why doesn't it work? And you'd say, well, I don't know why it doesn't work. It's just, it's not midnight. I know it's sometime during the day because the sun's out. It's kind of what I'm applying here. All right. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Can you hear me?
I can. Who's on the line?
Yeah. Yeah, this is Thibodeau.
Hey, how's it going?
Mark, this is fantastic that I got through to you again. I've been listening to your show. I'm from Ann Arbor. I'm the enemy. I used to say that a lot when I would listen to you. I think, well, Mark, I think you got the most fantastic program. One thing about you that I love listening to is that you are so, you call it the way it is. And incidentally, I played football in the Michigan Stadium. It's built underground. But your program is so fantastic because you're so unbiased. And I loathe Ohio State. Let's get that straight. But I'm so attracted to your show because when I first started listening to you a couple of years ago, you call it the way it is, and it's phenomenal. And I really mean that. And of course, I listen to Steve Gase, and I hear his jargon. But oh my goodness gracious, if Harbaugh, I live and die for Michigan, but if they get beat by Ohio State again, this guy, in my opinion, and what's yours, he has to be let go. He's been there for 7 years, and if we can't beat the enemy, what's your opinion about that? And when are we going to beat Ohio State again?
Well,
it's driving me crazy.
I got to say that I will compare it to the situations involving Mark Richt at the time at Georgia and Les Miles at LSU. They both compiled, they both compiled high winning percentages, and Les Miles even won a national championship. So that the comparison doesn't work out perfectly. But my point was that they were not meeting expectations for a period of time prior to their firing. If anyone would ask, based on the standard of holding most jobs in America, are these individuals doing a good job? You would say, yes, they're doing a good job. Would I say that Jim Harbaugh is a capable college football coach, and does he do a good job? I would answer that question, yes. The issue is that he is being paid, and I know that the contract was, of course, restructured going into this season, but let's take it back a year, being paid elite money to produce elite results. So the catch-22 is not that you're being paid to go 8-4 and go to a bowl game. You're being paid to produce championship results. And when you continue to fail and not meet the standard, you can still turn in a good season. But when that standard's not met for now a 7th time, yeah, I think they have every justification to fire him. I think they also have a justification to say, hey, we had a nice season at 10-2, and we think he's on the right path, and we like the results and the upgrade of the offense and the defense this year, and we'll give it another go. I can live with either. Again, I don't have an emotional investment in it. As I told Steve yesterday or the day before when we were recording, right out of the gate, I said, Steve, I take a measured approach on all these Michigan takes that you ask me to deliver, but I understand I've got no emotional investment. And if this was going on at Ohio State, I'd say, heads should be rolling. I get it.
And that's right. That's exactly right. And I tell people today, Mark, that incidentally, you have the best first name in the world because that's my first name. But incidentally, if we had your coach right now, if we could exchange, the Wolverine fans would say, "Oh my goodness gracious, we would rather have your coach right now than Harbaugh." And I've asked all my friends that question, and it just and you said before in your show, because you have a phenomenal show, that you're not mentally invested like I am. I'm an old man now, And I'll never forget the '69 game, and that's when I got hooked, when we beat Woody, and that was probably the biggest upset in Michigan's history. And but I'm still, I'm closing in on 70, but I played in the big house back in my day in a spring football game at Eastern Michigan.
Nice.
And it still drives me crazy. We can't beat you guys.
Yeah, and there is some type of an anomaly factor there, because if Ohio State wins 20 consecutive games against Maryland, no one's going to bat an eye. But if,
Right.
that there hasn't been that much of a discrepancy. And as you well know, people are swayed by recency bias, and the most recent has been 2 blowouts. But there are a lot of close games in that stretch as well.
A couple. Right. One went to overtime, a couple, right. And we came out on a losing streak. And also, I may add, when you just mentioned Maryland, Mark, and you're so astute with college football, that's why I love listening to your show, is that when the Big Ten, and I still call it the Big Ten, why in God's name, this is a whole different subject, we're going to include Rutgers and Maryland to enter the conference, the Big Ten? That's the biggest joke in the world, but that's a different subject. And I could go on and on and on, but I just have to say that I love your show, and I get the biggest kick out of listening to your show.
I appreciate that, Mark. I think that the Big Ten made a misjudgment there when it came to Maryland and Rutgers, and what it was is it's hard to make big decisions, certainly, when it involves multi-million dollars and huge moving pieces, but it's even more difficult to project the future. Very few people can have that vision to see where industry trends are going and how to get in front of it. And the Big Ten was kind of the victim of that, meaning that one of the huge reasons why they went and grabbed Maryland and Rutgers was to grab the cable homes in Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and New York City, not realizing that the digital age was just on the cusp of exploding. And those cable homes, number one, those people don't care about college football for the most part. And if they do, that's
correct.
They're transplants that probably are Notre Dame, Michigan, or Ohio State fans. That's been most of the polling and surveying I've heard out of New York City, is that those are the 3 most popular college football teams in New York City: Michigan, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. So that they somehow missed that analysis of the sports landscape, number one. Number two is that the cable industry is dying. It's still prominent, it's still huge, but it's dying a slow death. And they made a judgment call when digital media is taking over, and they went and got 2 bad football programs just for other reasons. They went and got Nebraska because it's Nebraska football. They went and got Maryland and Rutgers football because it's location and because of the cable connection.
That's correct. Yeah, and Mark, again, I have never in my life seen a bigger choke job. And these are third quarter with a 16-point lead. And you don't think I want to see Harbaugh? He has to be gone. If he doesn't beat Ohio State this year, you have to fire him. That's the biggest choke job I've ever seen in my entire life. And I played at Eastern Michigan Division I back in my day. I cannot believe what I saw. And I could go on and on and on. But again, I love your show, Mark. And I'm a lifetime listener. And I'm a Wolverine.
Well, if I can wear a badge of honor, that would be the one right there, that Michigan fans enjoy the show. So thank you so much for that, Mark. I appreciate it. And we hope to do better in the future. So we're still trying to improve, certainly, on what we do here each and every day.
You do a great job, Mark. And like I say, sometimes I'll make a comment, and I always say, go blue. And but you have a million people that are so wonderful, and you have a great show. Simple as that. And even though you're a Buckeye, I can handle you.
You can tolerate me. Well, that's good. Well, Mark,
Barely.
I appreciate you calling in for the first time. Welcome back anytime. Call
No,
on the
it's
show.
not the first time. I talked to you one other time. It was about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
Great show. Keep up the good work and go blue.
Thanks, Mark. Had to end it with that, didn't you? All righty. Bye-bye.
See you, Mr. Rogers. Bye-bye.
All right. Good to hear from a Mark and good to hear from a Michigan fan, of course. Number 7 in those college football playoff rankings. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello, this is Willie.
Hey, Willie. What's going on tonight?
And I called in this, I'm a Ohio State graduate, and I called in this week of talking about the 2 deep safeties, and Harbaugh was like Cooper.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember.
Oh, yeah, I do.
But I'd have to second you. I watch all the shows, and you're by far the best host of all of them because you are even keel, and you don't lean one way or the other to these callers. That's what I got from Michigan, like you. You just like you put up with that guy talking about the football player index that's got Texas 11 and Florida 8. I mean, come on. I don't know what's going on with that index. But what I wanted to talk to you about today is I wanted to see what you thought about these targeting calls and how they're not called consistently around the country in college football. And if they could make an adjustment to not kick the guy out on the first targeting call and have to maybe get 2 a game before you're dismissed from the game.
Yes, Willie. I think there are 2 major components to this issue. One would be the actual judgment of what targeting is and what should be punished. And number 2 would be the punishment itself. So I made the comment, I had seen that particular Saturday probably 7 or 8 targeting calls that I thought were misdiagnosed, misofficiated. And then, of course, the player gets kicked out of the game. So what I think is that there's just too much and it's too complicated to deal with in season in regards to trying to correct the implementation of the targeting call and what the officials and the replay people are looking for. What can be addressed immediately, like we're sitting here on a Thursday night and calls could be made between the 5 conference commissioners or the 10 conference commissioners if we're going to go group of 5, and they could say, you know what? This situation is so complicated in regards to what the officials should be looking for. That's an off-season worth of work. But what we can correct immediately is the penalty, because the penalty is too harsh. It's ridiculous. And beyond that, it's not even consistent from case to case. My point there being, every other penalty in football or in sports is consistent. If you're offsides, it's 5 yards. If it's pass interference, it's 15 yards. It's consistent every time. Whether it's called correctly or not, it's still consistent. This penalty is more or less severe depending on when it's committed during the game. If you commit it the second last play of the game, then you just missed the last play of the game and the first half of the next game. Well, if you commit that same penalty targeting the first play of the third quarter, you're going to miss the rest of the game and the first half of the next. You're going to miss a complete game versus the first case, the player only misses a half a game. That's ridiculous. Who thought of that? That makes no sense. Make it a number of plays, a number of series, but to just say, regardless of whether there's 13 minutes left in the third quarter or there's 13 seconds left in the game, this is what the penalty is. And we're basically doubling the penalty for certain players depending on when they committed the targeting. So that's the first thing that could be corrected immediately. And I think it should just be, I don't know, we could go beyond 15 yards maybe to really hammer home the point, but I think it's ridiculous that these players are kicked out of games. And it was insulting to them prior to this season, or was it last season? Prior to last season, when they were actually kicked out of the stadium and had to leave their team and had to take the walk of shame to the locker room. That was beyond ridiculous. So at least they can stay on the sideline now. But that needs to be corrected and could be corrected immediately. Now, when it comes to the actual review of the penalty of the action, what we expect, and I see this more and more, not just with targeting, but with unnecessary roughness and late hits on quarterbacks. We need to have these officials, and I'm not just talking about the officials on the field, I'm talking about the rules committee members. They need to go out to a football field and they need to go through the exercise of doing some of these things. Meaning, if you are running full speed in any direction, let's say for an unnecessary roughness or a late hit on a quarterback, if you're coming off the edge and you are running full blast and that quarterback at the last second throws the ball, I don't know what we expect. It's physiologically impossible to stop your momentum in a split second. And the same thing with targeting. We see it all the time. How these guys, I am actually astounded and impressed that many of these defensive players have been able to adjust their game and their approach to hitting, where they move their helmet, they move their head and move the shoulder in and hit with the shoulder, where they can do that in a split second. I've been impressed by how many times targeting is avoided by defensive players being able to do that, because we're asking them to do almost the impossible. And I'm all for protecting the players. I do not want to see severe injuries in football or any injuries. But what we've asked these defensive players to do is just beyond impossible.
Well, with the college officials, officiating in college is very poor compared to the NFL. But you got high school principals, you got insurance men, you don't have full-time officials.
Yeah.
So the officiating from one game to the next is very inconsistent in every aspect of the game. But you're right on everything you said about targeting. I agree with you 100% on that. My other question to you today would be about the Ohio State Nebraska game. And that's the power index. They were the only team with a losing record that was they were 29th. They're 3-6 or 3-7. Now, when we played them last year in Columbus, they still had that other quarterback that could run. Now, their quarterback, they were going for a field goal against Michigan when they fumbled and gave up that game.
Mm-hmm.
So I would not be surprised to see a fairly close game, at least into the second half of this game, if they're able to hit some passes on us. That'll be the whole thing. The guy's not accurate, especially under a rush when he's running around. But I don't know. I don't think we can lose this game, but I would expect at least a close game into the third quarter if the guy's hitting some passes, because he's erratic with his passing, and they really don't have much of a running game. And he takes a lot of chances when he's running. He's running in secondary. He could get hit and knocked out.
Well, yeah, that's the point I was going to make, is that in addition to the interceptions, which his interception rate this year has been markedly better than it's been in the past up until last week, when he got picked off 4 times by Purdue. He had kept the interceptions down before last week, but he's notorious now. And we're talking about a quarterback that has started now somewhere in the range of 40 games in college, and he still is susceptible to fumbling in traffic. He does not protect the football. He's never learned.
Yeah. He consistently makes poor decisions on the field. That's as big as physically, he's a good quarterback, but his decision making really holds him back. And they don't have much of a running game, and I don't know what kind of crowd they're going to have there. But the Purdue game, I'm just glad it's not at Purdue, because I don't care. We went out in 2002 and beat them on that Hail Mary on that 4th and 1. So if we would play Purdue at Purdue, it'd probably be a close game. I think we'll handle Purdue in Columbus. Do you agree with me on that?
Well, sure. I do think it could turn out to be a really good game. I think they're capable, but Ohio State's clearly a better team, but that could be a tricky one. Sure. Even in Columbus. What about
Michigan State? I think we should handle Michigan State, because we stopped the run basically, but I think we've done a great job of adjusting our defense as far as our front seven. Our back seven our back four people haven't done too bad. Our defense has improved a lot, but really, Michigan State did not have a pass rush on that quarterback at all in that game. Most of the game, he stood back there untouched. And they were only rushing 4 guys and dropping most of their guys in the secondary. So if they do that against, if you give Stroud time, somebody's going to get open. That's just a fact. And Michigan State, their quarterback, I don't know. They could hit a couple long passes on us. I'm not convinced that guy's as good as running back as everybody says he is, because I've watched him all year, and he does run through holes. But he will break the first tackle. I mean, after he does get yards after contact. But really, as far as the running backs this year, I don't know. We would have had Master Teague down at the goal line. I think he could have helped us a lot in that last game.
True.
I mean, not having him for short yardage really, I think, affects us more than anything. I don't even know what's wrong with him, why he hasn't been playing. But I just hope we can get to Michigan State and it doesn't happen like it did that one year when we were defending national champs and blew that game in the rain to their second string quarterback. I mean, but I did watch 6 different Michigan podcasts, and the only one that was the guy that you talked to, the heavyset guy with glasses. They all want Jim Harbaugh fired, but he was the only one still complaining about that spot. And I don't know, was it 2018 or
2016?
It was when T.J. Barrett was our quarterback. Yep. He was the only one still complaining about that spot. They will not give up talking about that spot. I mean, I don't know. I'd almost take a loss to Michigan this year if we lose to Michigan State to keep Harbaugh at his job. That's how I feel about him. I mean, I don't know. But I just want to say, you are by far the most honest sportscaster. You listen to everybody and give everybody a fair time. That's what I got from Michigan, called in and said the same thing I do. John, I mean, I really enjoy it, and there's nobody that watches more of these than me. And I'd have to say, you are one of the classiest people on TV, sir.
Well, I appreciate that.
And I just want to thank you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Well, that's very nice of you.
That's all I'd like to say.
Good to hear from you tonight, Willie.
And I'll be calling back again.
Absolutely. Please do, and enjoy the game this weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Our guy, Get Business Credit. Unfortunately, as I've explained many times, because I feel horrible when I can't get the super chat posted to the screen, that if we get to a certain point in the live chat and it's been too long, I can't go back and retrieve the super chat, but I get a little notification right at the top of the screen. Therefore, I've got it here from our guy, Get Business Credit. Thank you so much for that super chat contribution, saying, "Hi, Mark, showing support. Hope all is well. All is well." I got some really bad news from a personal friend today concerning a friend of their, a very close friend of their family who got sick and passed away today. So it's always hard to hear, even though I don't know that person personally. I've heard about them for a long time as a family friend of, again, one of my very best friends. So it's hard to hear when other people are suffering, even if it doesn't affect you personally in terms of your relationship, but it still impacts me because I'm impacted by their suffering. Of course, that's a horrible thing to lose somebody unexpectedly. It's horrible to lose anyone that's a close friend or family member, period, regardless of the circumstances, but certainly when it's an unexpected situation, that's tough to deal with. All right, but yes, all is well. Thank you so much for that. Again, Get Business Credit. I believe there's a business take there, and we would love to be able to pass that on at some point where you can get business credit. Okay. Many people noted in the live chat about the Georgia suspension. Let's get to that real quick before I take the next call, because this is concerning one of Georgia's best defensive players. So I'm taking this from Mark Powell. He works for Fansided. I just Googled it and pulled up the first, because it's all the same news. I just pulled up the first article I could find. All right. Georgia football coach Kirby Smart suspended linebacker Adam Anderson amid a rape allegation against the NFL draft prospect. I don't know that there's really anything else to go beyond that. Anderson's under investigation. Smart is elected to keep him away from the team for the time being. In a situation like this, it's what's horrible about it, beyond the possible act itself, of course, that's the horrendous part in all this, if it's true, is that you can't foresee the future. So the coach is in a difficult position because he wants to believe the player. He wants to believe the player. He wants to believe the player's innocence. But what do you do? Because let's say, for instance, in any case like this, the player's innocent and ultimately will be proven not guilty, or their innocence will be proven. Those are kind of two different things, but the conclusion's the same. Then it's an unfortunate situation because these things take time, and the player may miss 4 games, 6 games, the rest of the season. Who knows what it's going to be? I don't know. And so they get penalized for something they did not do. But on the other hand, this is obviously much more serious than football by 1,000 to 1. So this is the pretty standard approach that's taken by coaches nowadays, is to say, hey, we got to take this seriously. Let's just remove this player from the situation, remove them from the team. It distracts the team. There is a certain amount of respect, or in addition to respect, sensitivity given to the situation and the possible victim, the alleged victim in this situation. So there it is. And Kirby Smart said in a statement, quote, "I will be working closely with our administration to ensure we cooperate fully with all law enforcement and campus protocols." And that's pretty much what it comes down to. So much more controversial and more important than what Kirby Smart addressed a few days ago, although that certainly from a college football perspective caught a lot of headlines, and we discussed it here. We first discussed it with David Waters from Gators Breakdown. I hope you caught that video. It's about 3 days on the shelf at this point. Here at the Voice of College Football, we talked to David Waters from Gators Breakdown. He was the one who posed the question to Dan Mullen about recruiting, coming off the heels of Kirby Smart being asked after the game against Florida about recruiting and the importance of recruiting. Kirby's basic answer was, and I paraphrase, hey, we've got a good defense because we got good players. Meaning you get good players by recruiting and busting your tail on the recruiting trail. Dan Mullen was asked about recruiting and basically said, well, I'm not going to talk about recruiting now. It's not recruiting season. It's football season. It's in season. That's more for the off season. Now, he was slammed for that, and some of that was unjustified. So he needed to be more complete with his comment, and he needs to, any major college football coach needs to underline recruiting is important. That's all there is, because number one, it just is. That's a fact. And number two, the fan base wants to hear that you're working hard recruiting. They don't want to hear that, it's not that important. We focus on it at times. The fan base doesn't want to hear that. And that's not really a good business decision to make that statement. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
the man that gives college football its voice, the great Mark Rogers. Hi, and how are you, sir?
It is Mr. David Greenshield. Thank you so much for calling tonight. Good to hear from you. I'm doing well. How are you?
It's always a pleasure. I enjoyed your usual weekly visit with Mr. Steve Dace this week. I did have a question about the conversation you and him had. He laid out a situation scenario where he sees his team going 10-2 and, going to a New Year's Six bowl game. And, he feels they can beat Penn State. And I think they can beat Penn State at Penn State, although I think that's closer to a 50-50 game, though. What do you think, Mark? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State pulled that game out.
And if you recall, I kind of called him on that because he kind of laid it out as, and I know he was just trying to lay out what could be interpreted as a strong resume, a good scenario, a good season that led to a New Year's Six game, but still did not result in a championship #1, nor a win over Ohio State #2. So that included a Penn State win, but he seemed fairly confident in predicting that win. So if you noticed, I kind of jumped on that when he got done with his case example. And I said, yeah, well, going to Penn State and winning, I don't know if they're going to Penn State. Let me see. They've got Ohio State at home. They went to Michigan State. I don't know where they play Penn State.
No, I believe that's it, Mark. They played Penn State at home last year. So I do believe, because I think it's an even odd year type thing.
Sure. Just like it would have been with Ohio State, but that got messed up. Gotcha. Yes. So they go to Penn State. So I'm with you. I was like, whoa, Steve, that's going to be a tough call. And I don't know who I think is the better team. I think we need to understand that Michigan State beat Michigan. That's all that matters. That's the win in the win column, and it's done, and it's in the books. And therefore, by any evaluation, you have to rank and rate Michigan State above Michigan. But it was down the last few plays of the game. It was on the road. If somebody asks me who the better football team is, well, I don't know. It was that close that I really don't know who the better football team is. If somebody holds me to it, I'm still going to say that Michigan is.
I would tend to agree, Mark. I will say this about the Penn State. By the way, as an Ohio State fan, I'm still not over the fact that we have to play in Ann Arbor. The last two times we'll play the team up north, we'll both be in Ann Arbor. But
yeah,
I digress. So. But I will say this: I think that they can win at Penn State. I think Penn State's a pretty good team. Although you wonder where Penn State's going to be at. Basically being a 3-loss team, and if that's one of those games where maybe they go in and Penn State's really not playing for anything other than pride at that point. Not to say that Penn State couldn't beat them, because I certainly think they're more than talented to do so. But let's just take his situation scenario in the direction he was going. They finish 10-2. They go to a New Year's Six bowl game, and maybe they lose to whoever they lose to in that New Year's Six bowl game and go 10-3, as they've done in the past. Now, is he of the belief that the administration? He thinks that Harbaugh should be gone, but is he of the belief that their administration would still keep him, even if, let's say, he gets beat down by Ohio State and then beat down in the bowl game?
If I'm reading Steve correctly, I believe that he not only would make the move himself, but he believes that they will make the move.
Okay. Now, how much better, though, would Dace feel? Let's just say they won the game at Michigan State, held on to that 16-point lead, and they still get beat by Ohio State. And let's say they go on and lose their bowl game or win their bowl game. Would he have felt really good about that season, and would he still be resigned to having Harbaugh back? Because the bottom line is he's still going to have to beat Ohio State for them to go to where they want to go, or he wants them to go.
Yeah, and that's why the totality of the situation needs to be looked at. It's not a perfect parallel comparison, but let's say when Jim Tressel was hired at Ohio State, coming off Cooper, getting beat down by Michigan, and really having two marginal seasons by Ohio State standards leading into the Tressel tenure, that if you said Jim Tressel's going to go 10-2 this first season, lose to Michigan, and win a bowl game and go 11-2. Well, no Ohio State fan likes losing to Michigan, but if you can rewind to the year 2001, and based on what Cooper was doing, we would think, okay, well, that's a nice season. That's a really nice season. We want to beat Michigan, but okay, it's a first-year head coach. We're not going to chop off his head for losing to Michigan the first year. That's a nice season. Good job, Jim Tressel. Probably finished number 8 in the country. Great. But if you said, okay, we're hiring this new coach, Jim Tressel, and 7 years from now, he's going 9-3, 10-2 every year and losing to Michigan, and he's never going to win a Big Ten championship. And here we are in year 7. Well, that all has to be taken into totality. And from that standpoint, I almost wished that Michigan would have beaten Michigan State, been 11-0, and lost to Ohio State to see what they would have done.
I would have loved to have seen that. I mean, listen to me. It's called 95 and 96.
Sure.
I felt that pain before. So, and 96, two of the best teams I've ever seen at Ohio State. That's why I think that after all these victories, I still think about how much pain I felt after those losses in the 90s. And to be fair, John Cooper had a great record. Yep. John Cooper lost his job largely because of one game, and everybody knows that, Mark. You know that. We know that. Mm-hmm. John Cooper to this day knows that. So, it's interesting. That's when he said that, I said, well, what if you would have won the Michigan State game and still lose to Ohio State? And, that would still have to ring as kind of a poor season, I would think, but I don't know. I wanted to get to the ultimate trap game this week, Mark. Does that Purdue-Michigan State game just reek of the ultimate trap game this week for Sparty?
It sure does. Yes, it does.
I mean, coming off of a big win, Purdue can be a dangerous team. Ask Iowa after they came off the big win against Penn State.
Also think of this, David. A few weeks ago, Michigan State, of course, was undefeated. They were headed to Bloomington, Indiana, and they were playing bad football, and they still are. But I made the comment, maybe to you, maybe to someone else, or probably multiple times, that not that I was predicting Indiana to win the game, but I said, let's wipe out the records and just look at the roster talent. There's not a whole lot of difference between these two football teams. And we could say the same thing about Purdue and Michigan State. Michigan State is not some 5-star talent roster. We're not looking at Georgia.
Right. With a ton of 5 stars. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing that makes what Mel Tucker did more impressive. Yeah. Mark D'Antonio did not leave the cupboard full. I mean, it wasn't, a situation. I mean, I say this fortunately as an Ohio State fan. I mean, Jim Tressel won a lot of games with John Cooper's players, and Urban Meyer actually won a lot of games with Jim Tressel's players. So, there's, it wasn't exactly stock full of talent when Mel Tucker got there. That's why he deserves so much credit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And he certainly recognized that and knew it coming in and was aggressive in acquiring new talent.
Hey, one thought about the Nebraska game this week, Mark. I find it interesting. By the way, I didn't hear Ryan Day's press conference. I got my question in on Buckeye Talk. Were either of the guys able to answer the question about why Ryan Day hasn't run C.J. Stroud a little bit more this year?
No, I saw your question, and we had a Nebraska guy jump on, and we started in that direction, so I did not get to that. And I didn't see Ryan Day's news conference as I typically do myself.
Yeah, I would be interested to see that, especially, even if it was in short yardage and goal line situations. I think it would have been really helpful last week, but again, we'll have to see if that moves going forward. I wanted to make a comment, though, before I let you go, about the Nebraska situation. I find it interesting, and you mentioned Adrian Martinez, has, had turnover issues in the past. Isn't it interesting that Martinez is, that Scott Frost's lack of success, and you hate to put this on a collegiate athlete, may have been just tied to his quarterback, and not having, because who's been his starting quarterback all for pretty much since he's been at Nebraska?
Yep.
Right?
That's been the guy.
And, it's just interesting that, he's had all these turnovers problems. They lose these close games. And if Scott Frost and Nebraska don't go to a bowl game, end up with a losing record this year, it's just interesting how much so, that even in college, you're all often tied to your quarterback, and your lack of success can be tied to him. You hate to put that on a collegiate athlete, but I don't know if your Nebraska people feel the same way.
Yeah, Scott Frost has to be processing that, and at some point in his career, thinking maybe there's a bit of arrogance there that he thinks, I know offense and I know quarterback play, and I develop quarterback play. I can coach this out of him. I see his skill set, and so I think I can win with the skill set. I got to coach the mistakes out of him, and I think I can do that. And then you get attached to, sometimes we may underestimate the relationship between a coach and a quarterback, and a coach and just various players on the team. They see them every day. They're in the workout room. They're in the film room. They're, just sitting one-on-one talking, and they recruited them. They signed them. Well, not in his case necessarily, but, and there's a relationship there. It's not just a coach on the sideline and he's moving just nameless people out onto the field. They have a relationship, and there's got to be at some point some level of loyalty there that may be misplaced, some allegiance that you have to honor and respect to a certain degree, but it may not be the best career move. And I don't know that that's the case. I'm just conjecturing, but where you just think, okay, well, this is my guy. And you're right. There are any number of quarterbacks that could have been available the last two off seasons in particular. Once I felt, let's say 2 off seasons ago, that Adrian Martinez wasn't going to be the player that he was touted to be. That was at least my conclusion. And for this one time, I was right. And there were other options to go get in the transfer portal, because they certainly didn't recruit and sign quarterbacks.
That's right. Yeah, and it's interesting how they lose these close games, and a lot of times inevitably he's making a key fumble or interception or mistake that's costing them. And obviously that's a lot of times what most games come down to. So I think it could be a competitive game this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised to see Nebraska keep the game close, maybe for a little while, but I think the Buckeyes will pull away, definitely second half, or at least.
Yep,
probably win fairly comfortably.
All right, David.
Mark. Well, as always, it's a pleasure. Take care of yourself.
Thank you so much, sir. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
We got 2 callers on the line. Let's take these 2 calls, and then we will call it a night with all of you here at the Voice of College Football. Actually, 3 callers. So the 3 callers on the line, we'll go with these 3, and then we will bid adieu. Before we do that, thanks to a Buyer's Vacation Rentals. Oh, boy. Oh, Mark, I wish I had the time to call in, but here's $5. Thank you so much for that, Buyer. So much appreciated. Contributed the other day on the Buckeyes show as well. But be ready. So Buyers, basically, I'm as they state, ready all the time. So I'm here taking phone calls, so I don't need to study up or be ready in any particular way. When I call, we have a lot to talk about. Okay. All right. We will do just that. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Minnesota Dave.
Hey, Minnesota Dave. How are you?
I'm doing good. First of all, I want to make a shout out to Central Michigan for beating their rivals, Western Michigan, last night. Corral Templeton had 2 punt returns for a touchdown and scored a touchdown caught a touchdown on a passing play, and ended up scoring 3 touchdowns, of course, and all in 5 minutes.
Very good.
And my question for you is, do you think that PJ Fleck, the AD, maybe pulled the trigger a little bit too quick on PJ Fleck's 7-year contract?
Nope.
Maybe you should have waited until the end of the season.
Nope. I like PJ Fleck. I think he's doing a great job. Minnesota has its challenges. We all know that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to stay. Coaches are given contract extensions all the time and still leave, but it does help further that relationship, and it does substantiate that the administration and the AD believes in the football coach, and I think that's a good move by Minnesota. I did not realize the time. I'm going to push through these last calls. Minnesota Dave, thank you so much for calling tonight. I appreciate it. You have a good night.
Thank you.
And these last 2 calls, let's knock these out. I wanted to get off the line by 8:30, 8:45 at the very latest. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, how you doing? My name's Will. I'm a Michigan fan. How are you doing?
Hey, Will. I'm doing well. I appreciate you calling. What's going on tonight?
Well, I just had something really quick I wanted to say, because there's still a lot of Jim Harbaugh apologists, I think, that for some odd reason think he should still be the coach. One thing that bothers me about what he does, and I wanted to know, you being the mind that you are, you know so much about, you study football the way you do. One problem I think we have in the red zone, and I was wondering if you might agree or not, Michigan, is it seems like he keeps trying this duo with Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins, and Blake Corum obviously being the speed and Hassan Haskins being the power. And the problem is, I think, and I don't know if you'd agree or not, is Hassan Haskins, he can always break through the line. And this is the biggest problem I think we got in the red zone. He can always bust straight through the line, but he usually doesn't have the speed to trot away for a touchdown. The best he can do is break through and get us a first down or maybe 15 yards. Blake Corum's got the speed, but he doesn't have the power. He gets swallowed up. He's only as good as the defense if the defense is bad. Some of the better defenses that we've seen, it seems like he's just like Michigan State. He just pretty much got swallowed up the whole time. You know, one thing, if you look at Nick Saban, it seems like one of the things that I think any coach could take away from him is he always goes for the running backs that look like bodybuilders. I mean, you look at Mark Ingram and T.J. Yeldon and Trent Richardson. I mean, these guys look like they could be bodybuilders. I mean, straight power, but they're also fast. And I just feel like that's what you need, especially in these red zone situations, and we just don't have that. It's just one or the other, and that system of swapping running backs out, it just isn't. I just don't think it's working at all. And also swapping quarterbacks out, you know, with J.J. McCarthy, you know, he fumbled the first time, and there's a little rumor going around that when J.J. McCarthy fumbled that second time that Cade McNamara was in the tent, you know, that came out not to be true. He was on the sideline, but that was just Jim Harbaugh doing his usual thing. He didn't go to the tent until after the ball was fumbled and Michigan State took over. That and Jim Harbaugh just let J.J. and everybody just take the rap for it. But J.J. should have never been on the field. That was 100% Jim Harbaugh, and I don't understand. Like, do you know what it is? Like, why anybody would still want Jim Harbaugh to be the coach at this point?
Well, because he wins games. He wins a collection of games. He doesn't win the important games. So his winning per se, he's just been good enough, and especially since we were coming off Brady Hoke and Rich Rod, and their record was just a few games over 500 over the course of 2008 through 14, 7 seasons. So he's been a huge upgrade, and of course he had the success at Stanford and in the NFL, and he's a native son, and he's one of the best players in the history of the program. So all that added up, and then he gets off to a good start, and so You've seen it in 2015 and 2016, this great improvement. And so then you just kind of continue, it's only been 17, 18, 19, and 18 and 19 were obviously, especially 18 was a great season up until the end, that he's done just enough and posted. He's basically fielded a top 15 team in the country all but one season, basically. He just hasn't won championships.
Yeah, but I mean,
he loses to the wrong teams and doesn't win championships.
Well, I agree. Every team we played to this point hasn't really been that good, though. To me, it doesn't even matter. And I'll let you go because I know you got another caller. But I just wanted to say too, one thing that bugs me, and I don't know if you've caught on to this with Jim Harbaugh. He makes these amateur mistakes during the game. He plays way too conservative. And I don't know if you've noticed, but during the post press conferences, he doesn't even want to take accountability for it. He acts like a kid that got in trouble by his mom and dad and is having to discuss it with his parents. Like he doesn't even want to talk to the media. He takes no accountability, and that's the difference between good coaches and great coaches. Is great coaches take accountability, and Jim Harbaugh takes no accountability. I'm gonna let you go. Hey, give a shout out to Steve Daceful, bro. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate that. One more tonight, and this is going to be a brief one, so I apologize. You can always call back tomorrow night. We'll be here on Friday. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Hello? Maybe they hung up. All right. Appreciate everybody being here. We will be back here on Friday. So we'll take your calls on Friday as well, leading into the weekend. And please, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App, you can contribute there. Subscribe to the other channels, especially the ones under 1,000. It's a key in terms of YouTube analytics and algorithms. So appreciate all your help and support. Thank you for the kind comments as well here at the Voice of College Football. We will announce a time for Friday Night Talk here at the Voice of College Football as we will preview Week 10. See you soon.